Hello, I'm Simon from CareCo, and I'm going to show you how to assemble the Calgary Swivel Recliner chair. As you can see, I've taken all the components out from the box and I've placed the packaging to one side. In front of me, we have the stool of the Calgary and the main chair. There's also a fixing pack which is used to assemble all the components together. The Calgary footstool comprises of 3 components plus the fixing kit. We have the base, the footstool and the U-frame bracket. We'll start by turning the actual foot pad over so that we can access the place to place the bolts through the U-frame and into the pad. With the foot pad turned upside down, I can now place the U-frame bracket on top. And I'm going to align the brackets with the hole on the foot pad. We can then take the 4 bolts and place them into position. Initially, we'll just tighten them by hand. Once we tighten them by hand, you can reposition the U-frame bracket to ensure it's in the middle. Once you're happy with the positioning with the provided Allen key, we'll tighten up those bolts. With the U-frame bracket now fitted to the pad, we need to fit the base. The base I'm going to turn over, and you'll notice that there's 4 feet which need to be pointing upwards so that when we fit it and turn it the right way up, they'll be sat on the floor. So take the base plate and align it with the holes. With the base plate fitted, we need to take our fixing kit bolts and ensure that we place a washer onto the bolt before we place it through and into the U-frame bracket. So with our washer on, we can place it through and into position. Again, as before, we can just hand tighten these. With all 4 bolts fitted, we can now use the Allen key and ensure that they're tightened up. With the 4 bolts fully tightened, that's the footstool complete. To assemble the Calgary chair, I've laid the components in front of me. For this, we have the swivel base, the U-frame brackets, and the other components that are needed before we fit the seat pad and seat base of the Calgary chair. We start by fitting the adjustment bracket, which is used to recline the chair, to the U-frame bracket. Now, it's important that this part here goes away from you. So essentially that is angled down. So placing that to my side, it is higher at the front, and this is where I take the adjustment bracket and place it over the U-frame bracket. You'll notice that the holes do align. We can now take the integrated washer and nut and place them underneath and through, and they will locate that bracket onto the U-frame bracket. We can now take the corresponding bolt and just hand tighten into position. We now repeat this with the integrated washer and nut and the corresponding bolts. Once all the 4 bolts have been fitted and hand tightened, take the Allen key and ensure that they're all tightened up. With the bracket now fitted, we can fit the actual base to the U-frame. To assemble the rotating base, we need to turn this upside down. So the ring is what sits on the floor, but we're now going to place this on top of the U-frame bracket that we've just been fitting the adjustment plate to. Again, we can just align the holes by eye, and then we take 3 bolts on either side and make sure that we have a washer located on them before we place them through the holes. So I'm just going to do them finger tight, and I'm going to add them to the other side just to make sure that it's aligned correctly. We'll now repeat this with the remaining bolts and washers so that there's 3 bolts and washers located on either side. As we have done with all the other bolts, we're now going to take the Allen key and just ensure that these are tightened up. With all 6 bolts now fully tightened, we can rotate this base over and fit some brackets. With the framework now built up, we're going to fit these brackets so we can fit the padding and the rest of the chair. We need to ensure that the base is located as so. This is the front section here, and it's sloping down away from me here at the back. The brackets are handed, and we need to ensure that the 2 countersunk holes are facing upwards in the middle. There's also a bracket here that sticks up, and that needs to point inwards towards the chair. And this will be the same on the other side. So with the bracket located and these screws placed in by hand, you'll notice that this part of the bracket is pointing inwards and there's nothing sticking out towards the outer edge. Before we can fit the seat part to the frame, we need to connect the seat back and the seat base together. These are located by the brackets on the back, and we use a simple bolt and nut to locate this bracket onto the bracket on the seat back. Once in position, I can take my bolt and place it through the bracket and then place the nut on the other side. Once again, I can tighten these by hand, and then I need a 13mm spanner and my Allen key to tighten these up. So the spanner goes on the nut, and then I can just tighten that up. You don't have to do them too tight, just ensure that they're in position. With those now tightened, we can place this onto the seat frame. I've now placed the complete pad and seat base into the U-frame, as you can see here. I'm going to take this bolt and place it through the bracket underneath the seat pad, which then goes through this adjustment bracket here underneath, as you can see. Align the bracket underneath and place that bolt through. I can then take the nut and add that on and hand tighten as I have done before. We can now tighten this using the 13mm spanner and the Allen key. With the chair now located on the front, I can place the 2 bolts, one on the left and one on the right hand side, through the bracket and into the backrest itself. You'll see there's a hole here, and inside there is a captive nut which the bolt will tighten into. So align with the hole, place through the bracket, and then hand tighten as before. We can now repeat this on the other side, and once in position, take our Allen key and tighten those 2 bolts up. To finish the chair, we can just fit the arms. As you can see, I've already fitted the left-hand side arm, and will now fit the right. Notice how this part here is longer towards the back, and therefore the arm is going to sit that inside the chair, and this part will go down by the bracket. So we place in and under, and then push back, and underneath here, the 2 holes that are both countersunk are going to line with the holes that are in the actual arm itself. So again, as before, we can put the bolts through, hand tighten them, same on the back, and then once in position, again with my Allen key, tighten those up and the chair is complete.